Hey, it's Marilyn Devonish here from transformationstm.com, and welcome to today's session, which is Think Tank Thursday. So in a moment, I'm just going to go forth and check and make sure that you can see what's on Facebook, because I'm hoping to stream to there. And then once I've double checked that we're good to go and cooking with gas, yes, we are. I can see myself on Facebook. Turn the volume down. Cool. So we are ready to rock and roll. Now, just to give you a little bit of a heads up in terms of what Think Tank Thursday is, kind of does what it says on the tin, really, in terms of people in the membership group can come up with a question, query, something they are stuck with, a challenge that they have, and we will put our heads together in the group so people can comment on the thread. And what also happens is I will sit down and look at what people have submitted as well and come up with some additional ideas. So it's that whole thing, if you get into what we call in photo reading terms, brain lock, and you're just like, I don't know what else to do with this thing, then put it into the mix. And the idea is we bringing those kind of what I call those light bulb aha moments, which is just to get the kind of grey matter going. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. Now, one of the things I always say, and I use this on my workshops as well, one of my favorite sayings when I went out to Hawaii to study Huna is, think not that all wisdom is in your school. So this is not intended to be the be all and the end all. It really is just about that food for thought, those light bulb aha moments, and just to give people something else to kind of think about and consider. So we've got a few things that we are going to be covering today. So one of those is what I've called how to influence the misinformed. And this was based around the question with regards to Brexit and the fact that there are facts and figures out there, they're being shared and people are just completely ignoring them. So they're asking kind of what do we do about that? The second thing we're going to be looking at today, and we've got three, is kind of having a day job and thinking about giving all of that up to start your own business. So one of the things I've said in the thread is before you do that, there are a couple of things I would suggest, and I would suggest starting the business now while you're still working. So the question then was, well, why would I start the business while I'm still working? So I'm going to answer that one as well and just put my thoughts around that. And we're also going to kind of look at the issue and the question of how do you tackle hostile conversations with loved ones. So that's what we have coming up. And just to then round it off, we've got some offers that are coming to an end this month, if you happen to be watching that in real time. So I'll give you a little overview of that and a heads up. The first one that's coming up is actually running as a live video webinar on Saturday, this coming Saturday. So gosh, it's 2 days from now, isn't it? Woohoo! Alrighty, so let us begin with how to influence the misinformed. Oh, first thing I'm going to say about that for the person who submitted this question, you will of course know who you are, I'm not going to say it out loud, is thinking about the kind of the idea where you're talking about creating your current reality. The thing I would say about that, and I kind of alluded to it on the thread, but just so we have it on the video, is that I think the point that was being made is not just, it's not about saying it's going in that spiritual route. The way that I kind of read that was about not letting the current reality invade your thoughts and control the way that you're acting, the way that you're living, the way that you're thinking. So that's what I'm going to say about that one. But we've talked about it a bit in the thread already. Okay, I do have to do that later. Sorry, just looking at the message that just came up there. All right, so where do we begin? We're going to start with how to influence the misinformed. Just a few thoughts and ideas for you. They were saying, how do you get through to those who are grossly misinformed about Brexit? So one of the things, and actually let me grab a pencil so I can, because we've got 2 pages of stuff to go through here, so I can just tick them off as I go. All right. One of the things I'm saying, this is in no particular order, just kind of thoughts as they come. It might be that it has to bite first. So there was a situation with Trump where people who voted for him suddenly found themselves without jobs, without food, without benefits, without healthcare. And it wasn't until that moment that they then started standing up and protesting about the current president. But at the time they were campaigning, they were kind of believing the other side of the story and the rhetoric that was being peddled there. And the thing that made them stand up and then start coming out against the president, even though they were staunch supporters during his campaign, was the fact that suddenly the promises and what they thought was going to happen to other people started happening to them. So sometimes there's a whole thing where, you know, reality has to bite before people will get it. So that's the first thing I would say. There's one thing that my mum used to say to me: if you can't hear, you must feel, as in FEEL. There are times where you could talk to someone till you are absolutely blue in the face, and they're just not going to hear it. And one of the things, as I'm saying that now, I just remember we lived in Clapham, William Bonney estate. Around the side of the estate there was a wall. It started off really low and then got higher and higher and higher. It's probably really dangerous actually, but as a child, I'm guessing now it's probably about 10 foot. It used to look like 200 feet, but my mum would always say, keep away from the wall, don't walk on the wall, let's stay off the wall. And of course I didn't. I walked on the wall, lost my footing, I fell, and to this day, don't know if you'll be able to see it on camera. Let me just see. No, actually, I better not do that because I'd have to lift my whole skirt up. But if you ever see me and I'm wearing a skirt, I'll show you that I still got the scar on my leg. Yeah, it's the keep calm and let Marilyn handle it day. But I still got the scar on my knee from that. And I got no sympathy whatsoever when it was blood all over the place, etc., etc. If you've got black parents, you might know how that goes with the "what did I tell you?" as I'm getting slapped. If you can't hear, you mustn't feel. And then, of course, the dressing was put on and all the rest of it. So sometimes life is a little bit like that. You can tell people till you're blue in the face. You can reason with them or try to, good luck sometimes. Or they might just have to feel it for themselves. So that's the second thing I would say. I would also say that I don't spend nowadays huge amounts of time pushing on what I would call closed doors. Another thing my mum would say, she would call me hard ears. I don't think that was true. I think I was actually quite a good child. But anyway, but hard ears means you're just not listening. And I think one of the reasons I've got super soft, squidgy ears is because my mum used to ring my ears a lot. As in, I'm not listening and being dragged around by my ears. So I think the cartilage in my ears is just ridiculously soft compared to many people that I know. But if people are hard ears, they will be in a situation where they only see and hear and experience what they see and hear and experience. And you could be talking until you're blue in the face and it's just going to fall on deaf ears. So sometimes that is just the way it goes at that particular time. So that's another one to keep in mind. And then I would say, how hard do you want to push on that door? Or have you got other things and better things to do with your time? One of the other things I would say is you can still continue to share links, you can continue to share the information, and whether or not they want to see it, want to hear it is up to them. So that's one of the things I would say. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop what you're doing, but you may not be doing it directly and go, oh my God, you should look at this and you should do that and da-da-da. It's not always about that, but you can just continue to put out the information that you're putting out and sharing the facts and the figures and the evidence and the experiences that you have, and trusting if it's meant to land with someone, it will land with someone. So that's one of the other things I would say. What's the next thing? Oh yes, sometimes I would say there are times, a bit like if you can't hear, you must feel, there are times where things will have to hit people where it hurts. So let's just say they decide to go to Europe, wherever their place is, where they jump on the ferry and they're going for their fags and booze run, and suddenly there's a problem. They don't have the right paperwork, or they can't do what they usually and always used to do. Or it might be that somebody's just thinking they're going on a quick European trip, as they always do. They get online, they book their flights, they rock up at the airport, they hand in their passport, and they get on the plane and they arrive in their destination, they have a great time. If it then gets to the stage where that freedom of movement is restricted, then people will start to get it. So it might be that they need to have an experience for themselves where they have what I do call that aha moment and that light bulb moment where suddenly the penny drops and you're like, oh my God, this is what they were talking about. Oh, that's brilliant. We've got a few comments on there. So hi, thank you, Sat Dev. I'll go through those in a moment. That's brilliant. And so there's often that sort of thing as well. And one of the things that you can do, one of my favorite phrases when I am genuinely like, how is it that people haven't got this, that they haven't understood it? I'm genuinely interested in that. And so one of the things you could do is kind of whatever they're saying, you can say, oh, that's really interesting. The white paper, the document that I read was saying it's completely different. And so it's like, I'll send you mine if you send me yours, sort of thing. So one of the things you can do is you can say, look, I've been reading something about that, which is actually completely opposite to what you've been saying. I'll send you the link to the white paper, government document, whatever it happens to be. Can you send me the link to your reference and what you've been reading? So I'd really want to see that, just so I can get my head around it. If people are then just spouting off the top of their heads and they've believed in the side of the NHS bus, which we saw very quickly was an untruth, then they're going to have nothing to send to you. If that happens a couple of times, if somebody is somewhat switched on, they will then get to a point of going, so they've got lots of facts and figures and evidence and da-da-da-da-da. I got nothing. And part of your brain will eventually sort of go, well, if I can't find any evidence to what I'm saying, if there's nothing has been documented, if I just heard my friend say it and I asked my friend where they heard it and they heard their friend, there are times where it's like the ripple effect, like my logo, which is behind me on the shelf. But there are times where the ripple effect will kick in and people go, maybe there's no substance. I'm not saying that is always going to happen, because again, we come back to hard ears, and people will only see and hear and experience and pay attention to what they want to. And as we know, we see it all the time. We're not going to talk much about religion. It's a bit of a dodgy area, but you can give someone a verse from the Bible, let's say, or the Quran or whatever it is, and they can spin it to suit their particular way of thinking, doctrine, rhetoric, etc. So I then come back to, how much do you want to push on a closed door? So those are some of the things I would say about that, just to kind of keep you thinking. And Satda says, so true. People think the grass is always greener on the other side until they have a taste of reality. And I really think, that kind of sums it up, that trying to force people into it maybe isn't the way to go. And there's another, I think of it as a Caribbean saying, it probably is around as well, but it's the whole premise of you often catch more with honey than with vinegar, is the way the saying goes, and trying to push people into it and make them see your point of view and slap them around and try and make them see facts as you perceive them, because there are two sides to every story, of course, is hard. But the sweetness side is having people come to their own conclusions and make their own decisions. So that's what I would say about that. So that's kind of just a few thoughts on how you might try and influence and misinform. But my suggestion would be, do what you're doing. If you can, ask for further information, ask to see their source of documentation, because there are times I've said to somebody, well, that's interesting, I've never seen that before, can you send me a reference or a link? And they do, and I'm like, whoa, that's interesting, wow, and I've actually learned something new. So be open to that as well. But that's what I would say about that. So second one we have is the premise of being in a day job and deciding that you are going to give that up and start your business. And the thing that I said is, you may also want to consider the possibility of remaining in your day job and starting your business at the same time. And they said, well, why is that? So this is kind of why that is. Okay, I will do. Thank you, Alexa. Yeah, I'm having a few challenges presenting directly into Facebook, so I've had to get creative with some of my other tools. But I know if I stream it on my page, it will automatically record and I can drop it into YouTube, and then if I want to, I can make a secret video, blah blah blah. So that's why we're not on the membership group page at the moment. So here we go, in no particular order. And I think, just to give you a sense of clarity around this one, we've got 11 things that I'm going to very quickly whiz through. Number one, in terms of reasons why you might want, this is seriously, as we're going to come back to this, let me just remind, for those of you who are maybe just joining us a little bit later, let me remind you of this. Think not that all wisdom is in your school. It's one of my favorite Huna sayings. So these are just some thoughts and ideas and suggestions. It's not the be all and end all. And I'm always, and people in my membership group already know, they have their own free will. I'm just going to put a few kind of ideas and a few kind of bits of food for thought into the mix, and then do with it what you will and take it where you want to go. But these are just a few thoughts and suggestions and ideas about why you might want to start the business while you're in the job. Number one, it gives you the headspace to plan objectively and rationally. And that means, so you've got your day job, things are covered. We're going to talk about that in point number 2 in a bit more detail, but you can think straight, you can think rationally. You don't have to rush into anything because it's not the only thing that you're doing. So that's the first thing. Number 2, if things don't take off straight away, you're not plunged into panic and you're not plunged into survival mode, because that's either for you very depressing, and number 2, it's what I call, it either is depressing or it gets ugly. And when I say it gets ugly, what I mean by that is people's personalities, even if they're really lovely people, desperation can drive them into acting in particular ways. And so if you already have what my mentor, and I always also used to call it that as well, my headspace, it means you don't get driven to either of those two polarities. There's not massive amounts of depression. And when I say depression, I don't mean, like clinical depression. Let's just say it's let's say demoralizing. That might be a better word for it. You don't get kind of completely demoralized because things aren't working and things aren't moving in the way that you wanted, nor do you have to fall into desperation, which can lead, normally lovely, sane, wonderful people to do really crazy stuff. So that's the second thing. Number 3, you can split test and ignore, and kind of just get the noise out of your head. So you can split test and you can explore without having everything riding on it. Trust me when I tell you, I'm in a lot of entrepreneur groups. So let's say somebody's going to do some Facebook advertising, haven't got much of a budget. They might not even have a budget at all. So if they decide to take the plunge and do the Facebook advertising and also do the split testing, which can actually double, treble, quadruple your costs, because you're going to run the same ad several times. And to get good data, you need to run it over a period of time. Just doing it for 24 hours isn't going to give you anything near what you need. When people run those ads, now everything, like their last bit of money, payment for rent, mortgage, is all riding on that, and then that can, even that in and of itself can kind of impinge on their levels of creativity and what they are able to actually produce. So if you're already working, you can split test and you can actually figure out what is working, start doing more of that to start building up the customer base. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing, which is kind of leading on from that, is you can establish, you've got the time to establish your client base and get clarity on your offering. So what is it you're putting out into the world? What is it people are responding to? Who is it you're going to be serving? And sometimes that straight off the bat. Other times it comes as a process of elimination, and it can even change over time as well. However, if you're already working it and you're not trying to figure this out while you go along with no money, no income coming in, you're going to probably do a much better job at, number 1, having the time and the space to figure that out, but number 2, having the time to test your market and see if your assumptions and see if your research is correct. So that's the 5th thing. Number 6, you will discover whether it is right for you. And kind of, one of the ways that you will know is if you're happy to work the odd weekend, the odd evening, and it doesn't feel like a massive chore, then that's normally a little bit of a clue that you're on the right track, you're really enjoying it. Because when you love doing something, you don't have to drag yourself to your desk or, drag yourself into your office and all that sort of stuff. It actually comes quite naturally. You're excited about it. And so you will find, so you'll have a sense of energy around it, even if you have had maybe a long day in the office. And I speak that from experience. When I was, for the years that I worked as a management consultant, I worked in central and local government. I was a Prince 2 project manager, change manager, and flexible and smart working specialist, and working on big projects like things for DFT, Department for Transport, Treasury Department, Ofsted, local authorities, Office of Deputy Prime Minister, OGC, the Office of Government Commerce. So those kinds of organisations, you know, FCO, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. So very different to the environment. But I would be at work all day. So, you know, arrive at 8:30, 9 a.m, be there till 6:30. Then I would come home and I would often do hypnotherapy clients from 6:30 to 8:30 or 6:30 to 9:30. That's when I was really starting out with writing for newspapers and magazines. So oftentimes after I finished a client, I'd sit down and write a newspaper or a magazine article. I also had a monthly problem page for Spirit and Destiny. So every single month, when it started off, I'd receive letters. And then once, you know, things changed and the format changed a bit, I'd be doing Skype or telephone coaching sessions with one of the readers. I'd write up my side of it. They would write up their side of it. So and then a lot of the times I was doing radio interviews with stations out in America. So I'd be dialing in by phone at around 11, 12 o'clock, sometimes 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I get up the next day and be back on site for my project management and management consultancy job. But because I loved what I was doing, there was no energy lag on that. And that for me was a signal and a sign that, yeah, I actually really do love this, because I'm willing to do that and it doesn't feel like a massive chore. So that's what I'd say about that one. Number 7, slightly kind of related to that in terms of discovering whether it's right for you. Don't want to be too harsh about it. And I'm not talking about you personally. This is kind of general. But entrepreneurship and being self-employed is not for everyone. If you are lucky enough to be in that position where you've already got a stack of regular clients, or you've created a model where there is recurring income, that is fantastic, because it's going to feel just like having a regular job. If you are not in that position, you will maybe potentially find yourself every once in a while in a position where you don't know what's happening at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or the end of the next 6 months or at the end of the year. And that kind of pressure doesn't suit everyone. And I remember years ago, someone was saying to me, oh, you're so lucky, you can do whatever you want and go on holiday whenever you want. And I said, yeah, the difference between me and you, though, is that when you go on holiday, you know, at the end of that month, regardless of whether you had a day off, a week off, a month off, or even you were on sabbatical and had 6 weeks off or 6 months off, somebody's going to put money in your bank account at the end of the month. I said, the difference with me is I could be on holiday every day, but unless I have the model I've just described to you, which I didn't back then I'll be sitting on that deck chair fretting and worrying, not knowing what is going to happen. And trust me when I tell you, that is pressure of a completely different kind. I know there are people who are in jobs and they hate their jobs and they hate their boss and all the rest of it, and that is pressure as well. And this is a different kind of pressure, because this comes down to base survival pressure. If you think about it in terms of, let's say, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we're right at the bottom of that triangle. Never mind all the self-actualization malarkey, your brain won't have time for that, because you're going to be under a different kind of pressure, and that does not suit everyone. And that's not to say that's the way it's always going to be, because once you get established, you find your market, etc., that can change dramatically. But be aware, if you've got nothing else that's going on and you put yourself in that situation and entrepreneurship isn't for you, and you're not in what you call able to cope with those crucible moments, I would say you need to think about that one as well. Number 8. Yes, I like this one. Well, I like them all. That's why I'm sharing them with you. I'm saying here, act as if you don't have any other income. Start the business and live on your new earnings. Simple. So it might be that all of the money that from your regular job, now goes into a savings account, for example, and you just live on what you're making, because that's going to give you a bit of a taster of, you know, getting a sense of the ebb and the flow and living more of the entrepreneurial business owner life. So have a play with that. Number 9. What you could do if you wanted to, and I would suggest this is a good idea, use part of your income from your day job and invest in the essentials for your business. So that might be things like SEO, sales funnel, setting up sales funnels, getting whatever relevant training you need. If there's kind of equipment that is required for whatever it is you do, getting all of that. It might be kind of learning and education. So, you know, put some of your income into that while you have freer cash flow to do it, so that while you are in your job, on the periphery, you're building yourself up and you're putting those foundations in place. So that's what I'd say about that. Similar to what I've said before, but this is a specific action. I've said here, use the security of your work to figure out what you want and figure out who your target market is and figure out how you are going to reach them and figure out your product offerings. And all of that you could do, or you could do bits and pieces of that in the evening. You could devote a Saturday or a weekend to figuring that out, and you're not having to rush through it. You can take your time and get yourself established. And number 11 is oh yeah, find appropriate opportunities to be self-employed while you're still working and see how people react. So what I mean by that is, if you're out at networking events, if you're at conferences, if you're at workshops, you might even just be in the supermarket striking up a conversation with a stranger. Forget about your day job and start being self-employed. Tell people what you do. Practice what they might call your elevator pitch. See how it lands. Are people going, oh my god, that's really fascinating, that's really interesting. Oh, have you got a card? Have you got details? Where do I reach you? If that's the reaction, it's like, yay, good, we're cooking with gas. That's step number 1. And then see what the reaction is to the follow-up is. See what the reaction is to your CTA, your call to action, and do all of that while you're still working. So put the day job to one side in terms of talking about it and all the rest of it. Start talking in terms of having your own business. See what the reaction's like. See what the CTA is like. And then watch and observe yourself as you follow up and you close on those deals and you close on those conversations. So that's what I would say about that. Let's see. Next, we have tackling hostile conversations with loved ones. So, with regards to hostile conversations, one second, let me just do this. Oh, okay. Da, da. Right, okay, so we have tequila. Right, so they put this in the group, and as I said, people in the group can come into the group and comment and share thoughts and ideas, which is really fantastic because it's lovely to have input other than mine. So somebody who came onto the thread when they talked about how to deal with hostile conversations, they said, the first thing that comes to mind is tequila. Now I can hear that song, tequila. So that's your first suggestion. So a couple of things I've said, reframe it in your head, because that whole thing about having to have hostile, difficult, challenging conversations from a, if we look at it from a neurological standpoint, if we look at it from an NLP point of view, the minute you talk about something being hostile or difficult or challenging or hard, you basically run the neurological program for that, and your mind and your body and your brain and your neurology starts to think about the last time something was really hard, the last time something was really difficult, the last time you were really challenged by something, and that, number one, puts you on alert, but energetically that goes out into the situation that you're in, and other people, even if they don't consider themselves to be sensitive to energy, let's just put it like that, will pick up on the vibe of that. So first thing I would say is kind of don't add to invoking the energy of that and bring it into the conversation. Reframe it in your head, and if it wasn't hostile or difficult or challenging, what would it be instead? And something that doesn't have the same edge to it or the same charge to it is what I would say. So that's the first thing after tequila. That did make me laugh. Okay, this one is, I'm saying here, check your why and your motives. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you're, and I know you're lovely, so I already know the question to this, but if somebody else were, and we are on a different page today, so someone else might be listening to this, but, if and when your motives are pure in terms of you genuinely want to move on versus, showing them what for and socking it to them, then, from that space, you identify the ideal outcome. But if your motive, if your driver is, I'll show them, That's probably not the best starting point either, because again, we've got that energy, we've got that kind of charge around it. So that's the second thing. Check your motives, check your why, and ask yourself genuinely in your heart of hearts, what is the reason you want to do this? What's the reason you want to have this conversation? And when it's coming from that place and space, I'm just there's a program I watched years ago, and there's a little line in there that says, "Go with God," but she's being kind of sarcastic about it. But the genuine version of that is then it comes from a place and a space which is genuine and loving and sincere, and that's the energy that goes into that conversation, and that's then the energy that's often received. Now, one of the things we talked about in NLP is there are times where you have an intention behind something, you say it, people take it completely the wrong way. So now your job is to go back and rephrase that and address, okay, what was it I said? How did I deliver that would have had that reaction? So, but it takes two to tango, and people are going to come to the party with their stuff as well and with their filters. And there are times it's not about you, it's about them. So you've got to keep that in mind also, even if you do come pure of heart, let's put it that way. Number 3, one of my favorites. I use this for a lot of stuff, a lot of different things. I've said mental rehearsal. So run the scenario and scenarios. I even made a point of putting a big O. Run the scenarios through to their full conclusion in your mind, and identify what you would possibly say and do. It's like running like a computer simulation, or if you ever have had to write computer programs, you would sit and you do your if then go to, and if your if then go to loop got you stuck in another loop and stuck in another loop, you're like, oh man, you need to figure it out. So the program runs from the point it starts to the place you want it to be, and it gives you the desired output. This is a little bit similar. So do your scenario plans, run kind of what their possible response and action and reaction could be, and just run all of those through your mind. Because one of the things it will do, your mind tends to relax more. It's a bit like the premise of photo reading. One of the reasons why we do a preview of the book, which just for 60 to 90 seconds, is that when your mind has a sense of familiarity with what's coming up, even if you deem the book, the report, the PDF, whatever it is, to be difficult, hard, challenging, complicated, really, almost impossible to understand, what tends to happen after that, what always happens after that, is that after you've done your preview, and particularly then again when you've laid it in with a photo reading for 5 minutes, where you kind of photo reading at 25,000 words a minute, by the time you get to your post view, which is less than 10 minutes after you picked up the book, you start to relax and you start to get those, again, we're back to those aha moments and those light bulb moments where you go, oh yeah, I know this. Oh, I recognize this. Oh yeah. And you start to navigate your way through it a lot more easily. Same principle holds true for when you do some scenario planning. You start to get a sense, and it's not to say that you're going to say exactly what you say in real life in terms of the scenario, but trust me when I tell you, it ups the ante and it tips the balance in your favor. So that is that one. And then depending on what the possible reactions are, you can also have something that, well, if they were to say this or do this or this is what I'd say, and this is how I'd act, and this is how I'd react. So you're a bit like in the theatre where you're doing your dress rehearsal, let's call it that. So we also have what I call using I language. So for example, if you were addressing something that had happened, you would be saying along the lines of, when XYZ happens or happened, if it's a thing that is in the past and it's not ongoing, I feel ... and you talk about how you feel, rather than the opposite of that, which is something along the lines of, well, when you do XYZ, you make me angry, upset, mad, you make me feel bad. You're sort of saying the similar thing, and I know you might say it's a play on words. However, the impact is very, very different. The I thing, you're not, how can we say, when they say if you point one finger, you've got, 3 pointing back at you, or 4, depending on how you hold your thumb. It's similar to that. The I thing isn't pointing the finger and you made me do this and you made me feel like that and It's kind of, you're just saying, this is my experience. This is how I've received it. And, when I was saying the whole thing about it takes 2 to tango, And there are different sides to the scenario when people come with their stuff. Some of how you receive something will also be based on your stuff and your filters, your previous experiences, the buttons that they've pressed. And those buttons haven't necessarily been activated by the person in question. It could be stuff that happened to you before, and vice versa. So the I statement takes the sting out of it and softens it a bit, and doesn't put someone immediately, as we used to say back in the day, on the back foot. And it doesn't immediately get their back up or make them feel defensive. And just for that little window of time, they can actually hear you without having to start, on guard and defending themselves. So again, one to play with if you're not already using that. Next one is imagine, this is now we get a little bit more esoteric with this one. Imagine the ideal outcome and ask for it. And when I say ask, I'm talking about, I said esoteric, so I'm putting it out there. So whatever your version, I call it like universe, and handing it over in a way, but I'm, put it out there that this is my ideal outcome, and you are asking and requesting it and putting it out energetically into the ether. And then what happens is you tend to be guided towards actions which move you towards that particular outcome. And we can talk about that in a bit more detail, maybe at kind of one of our, because we need to have a sharing Saturday teleseminar webinar or something, and it's coming up, if you're watching this in real time, hurtling towards the end of the year. So maybe we'll do a piece around the energetics of creation, because I think that could be quite fun, actually. Let me make a little note to self. 1 second. Alrighty. Cool. Come back to that. Right. Next one is, yeah, what's the best way for me to put that one? What I've said here is, I'm just trying to think of a way to kind of express it quickly. But I've said start, kind of state the bigger picture. Okay, macro, micro, let's put it that way. So the detailed bit is, what they've done or haven't done, how they've behaved or how they haven't behaved, what they've said or what they haven't said. That's like the little detaily bit. The bigger picture is what you actually want for that particular situation. So you want to move, presumably, if you want to tackle this, you want to move from where you are now in possibly that thing of being at loggerheads, and you want to be in a place and a space where things are more harmonious, or you can actually have different views and openly agree to disagree, for example. So we want you to stop looking at every step and every minute detail and start going, okay, what's the bigger picture here? What am I hoping for? What am I wanting to engineer? What is it I'm looking to create? And that can even be fed into the conversation that you have with them. So that's that. And that, again, it will be linking. If we did something around the energy of creation, we could kind of work something like that into it as well, in terms of life in general. Let's see. Okay. Now, the assumption would be you're asking because it does matter. However, one of the little sayings I learned when I did NLP back in October 2000, which is, well, 19 years ago to this, almost to this day, I was just learning about all the stuff I've been doing now for the last 19 years. And one of the slides that the trainer put up on the board, he wrote the word assume and then broke it down, drew lines between it. And he says to assume makes an arse out of you and me. So go back and look at the word assume. You can figure that out for yourself. And so I'm not going to assume. So what I'm going to say here is, one of the questions you could ask yourself is, does this really matter? And does it have to be said? Does this conversation have to happen? Let me give you an example for that. I had a family member who did something involving me, said something about me, which I thought was kind of shocking and disgusting. And it was just before I was about to go on stage. And I'm like, you got to be kidding. Now somebody came and told me this, because it was said to them, and I was like, you got to be freaking kidding me. So now I'm hopping mad that they would say such a thing about me, given that they're a relative. And number two, I'm then like, I'm doubly hopping mad now because I'm going to go on stage in front of 500 people. And now I've got this bee in my bonnet about what's just been said behind my back. So I'm like, man, oh man. So in that moment, of course, I had to, get a grip of myself and get my act together, because I didn't want to be on stage in front of 500 people with a bee in my bonnet and feeling all angry and upset, as we'd say, vex, and quite emotional, actually, because it was really quite horrible. And so I had to kind of get a grip and go, right, you know what, you're here to do your job. Let's just get on, the show must go on. So fine. After that was all over, next thing I did was phoned a very good friend, had a good old rant. And, I'm a fan in these instances of better out than in, but be careful who you say things to, because once it's out, you can't retract it and take it back. So I spoke to a very good friend, told her what had happened. She was kind of disgusted and outraged with me. So we're both disgusted and outraged together, which in those instances feels good, because you do like to be right. And then after all of that was done, I was then like, okay, this is somebody I have a long-term relationship with. I'm going to see them for as long as I'm on this planet. So now what? And I was like, and I was like, well, I think they need to know, and then I come back to what I'd said to you earlier. I kind of like, okay, Marilyn, what is a bit like when, an actor says, what's my motivation? I was like, okay, Marilyn, what's your motivation here? What's your reason for saying something? And I was like, well, I want them to know how I feel. And that's not right, because just in terms of, I can feel the energy of that. And I just thought, and I don't want them to get away with it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not really pure either. It's, really, no matter how I dressed it up, it was coming back to, I wanted to sock it to them. And I'm like, it's not a good enough reason, Marilyn, not a good enough reason. And I tried to convince myself it would be for the good of them. And it's like, Marilyn, that's BS, and you know it. And so then it came down to a couple of choices. It's like, look, I could go and say something just so I feel better about it, or I could just go, do you know what, we're going to need to get my head around this. And if it's not going to do anything to enhance the relationship, and it's not going to benefit anything or anyone, all it will happen is I will feel better in the moment when I'm socking it to them. I was like, I think I'm going to have to do an Elsa and let it go. And it wasn't until I was preparing for this today that I remembered about it, because this happened years ago now. But at the time, it was raw. It was raw, and it was consuming my thoughts. And, my brain was churning on it. And I was thinking all the things that I would say if they had the cheek to say that to me, and yada, yada, yada. And then I realized, today, I'm like, man, I haven't thought about that for years. So these things do fade, but a clear decision has got to be made that you kind of go, look, if there's genuinely nothing to be gained from having this conversation, for bringing this up. Now, trust me, if they were to pull a stunt like that again, I would definitely say something, because now I'm starting to see a pattern. If I saw a pattern, I'd be like, okay, I've got to close that down. So when I was making a decision about, actually, I'm not even going to go there. It's not worth it. Life's not long enough for this nonsense. Because it was a one-off. But if I did notice then that it was a recurring thing, now my genuine reason would be to nip that in the bud, and to make sure that this way of being and that way of being treated did not become the norm. But because it was just a one-off, and I hadn't had any evidence of it before, I haven't had any evidence of it since then, I'm like, I'm good. So it's a decision that is made. It's either it's important enough, do something about it now, you need to get your strategies to handle it, or actually, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that important. It's not worth your time, your energy, your headspace. But then the decision's got to be made to, all right, let's just move on from that. So that is a decision that would have to be made, and you will know the reality of that. Let's see. Oh, yes. And if it did get to the point where you had to kind of go, all right, it needs to be said, and I know why, and I can see the bigger picture, I can see the outcome, I can see what I want for both of us or all of the parties concerned, etc., then that will be the thing where you pick your moment, and for the, we need to have a chat and depending on how well you know them, you'll be able to gauge when the best moment for that is. And sometimes there is no best moment. So you have to, as a friend of mine, Mandy, would say, pull on your big girl pants or your big boy Superman pants and just kind of go, this is the thing, I'm picking up the phone, or I'm going to say, let's have a meeting, whatever it is. And last but by no means least, I would say stick to the facts. So you'll be saying something along the lines of, well, on the 10th of November 2013, or, you know, at XYZ's party, or we spoke about this on Tuesday, and I thought we'd cleared it up and said da 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 da. So don't come with, and I can hear Alexander O'Neill. Sorry, for those of you who don't work with me, when I'm coaching and stuff, I can hear music. There's a song called Hearsay. So try not to get too much into he said, she said, particularly if you haven't got first-hand evidence. If it's been about you, then, you know, think about when were those times. Pick half a dozen or so times where you can be very specific, so somebody can't wheedle out and think, oh, don't be stupid, you know, like let's just, if the example that comes to mind now is the classic behavior of what people would call narcissism, and I think the word is sometimes very loosely used because, you know, narcissism is a real kind of trait and there's a scale for it and everything. However, if we just kind of take the general view of that, somebody who is displaying those narcissistic traits, when you call them on what has happened, they'll sometimes laugh, they'll tell you that you're too oversensitive or you're being crazy, or, oh, you know, things are going so well, why do you always have to create drama? And then you're left sort of going, oh, am I drama queen? Am I crazy? Am I always bringing up the past? And so that's the reason why I'm saying, if I don't know what the dynamic is, I've got no idea who this conversation is with. However, if you know that there's a tendency for that, when you come with facts, yes, they can still do the thing like the people with hard ears, people only see, only hear, etc., what they want. However, if you're having a one-to-one, you're sitting down and you can name the date, or you can name the event, or you can talk about the conversation, you can have what's said, it changes the dynamic of the conversation. It's not quite so easy for people to kind of push the blame or deflect things out of the way. And, you know, the subsection of that, if I'm with executive coaching clients and they're either being bullied in the workplace or they're in a situation where they're moving towards disciplinary. Now, sometimes they are the ones who have to take the disciplinary action against someone. At other times, because of the situation that's going on, somebody is trying to take them to disciplinary. What I always say to them is start an audit trail, where you document what's going on. If you can, you restate things in writing as well, and you keep a very clear audit of what's been done and what's been said. The same could be true. You might not be quite as, you know, diligent about it if it's a friendship and that sort of thing, but a similar kind of thing, just loosely write in a diary or a notebook, you know, the date, what happened, what was said, the words, da 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 da, such that if it gets to that, there's no wheedling out of it. We're just dealing with the facts here. So let's just go through these and let's clear this up once and for all. So that is what I'd say about that. With regards to the other one, of course, because I've already said your name, I can't do it anonymously now. So I'm going to have to leave that one till maybe next time. But yes, so that's it for our Think Tank Thursday. In terms of that, couple of things that we have coming up. Well, coming to an end. Oh, sorry, we were talking about tackling. Sorry, I hadn't changed the thing, but we're talking about tackling the difficult conversations and hostile behavior. And the kind of final thing that I just want to close with today, as I'm on my main page rather than in the membership group, is we've got a few things that are coming to an end this month. If you happen to be watching them in real time, I'm going to be, the prices will be changing on this one. I'm running a Fearless Public Speaking one-day video webinar on the 16th of November. If you happen to be watching this after that time, it will be available as a replay recording, so it's on demand, so you can still take part in the full video webinar. It's just that it won't be live with as much interaction, but you'll be hearing the interactions and questions I've had. The likelihood is that they will apply to you too. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Next week, it's the end of the 20% off early booking price. Oh, hold on. Yeah, 20% off early booking price for the photo reading workshop. So that's going to be the one that's happening in 2020 if you're watching this in real time. And if you happen to be watching it outside of that, you might be watching this in 5 years. Hi, what's it like in the future? You can go to the Eventbrite page, secretofphotoreading.eventbrite.com, and you can see if there's a current early booking price. But the way that it works is like a reducing balance. So the early booking prices get less the closer we get to the the workshop. The main website for that is www.transformationstm.com. Trance is TRANCE, as in hypnotic trance. Formations is F for Freddy, so FORMATIONS. TM is in trademark, transformationstm.com/photo reading. And then there's a big red button on the main website that says click here for early booking prices. And we also have the offer of the month, which is happening. Oh, this is cool. Got 4 screens. So we also have the offer of the month, which is happening. And what that one is, it's the 1-day HUNA video webinar workshop. So with regards to the HUNA workshop, that was run as a live 1-day video webinar. There's now a replay recording. So I'm teaching you the kind of principles of HUNA, giving you a bit of the history and background. We're looking at things like higher self therapy, the HUNA heart breathing, the real version that I was taught, the fuller, but I won't say real version, that's not the right word for it, the fuller version of Ho'oponopono, which goes beyond the words that people talk about on social media. So the I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you. The version that I was taught was a whole big process where you got the stage and you got the Arca connections and you got the HUNA guides and all that sort of stuff. So we take you through all of that. There's the some of the high self therapy kind of meditation processes. We look at more detail in the heart breathing and what's the reasoning behind that. We're also looking at, show you the HUNA symbols. We're doing HUNA clearing. So there's a lot that we're kind of doing with regards to that. And that's a 1-day video webinar workshop. And if you're watching this in real time, it's 30% off until the end of this month. So details for that are in my latest e-newsletter. Oh, actually, there's also a QR code if you've got a smartphone or an iPad on my page if you're watching this in real time. So you just hold your phone at the QR code and it will take you to the page, and that page will expire on at the end of this month, end of October. So that's it really. I wonder if we can get 5 on screen. Oh no, we can't. I can tell we can only have 4. Cool. So that's it. That's in terms of the offers that we have coming up for this month. So thank you for joining me for Think Tank Thursday. It's something we do every single month in the membership group, and we have 7 themes that run throughout the month. So we start the month with Motivation Monday, which does what it says on the tin, something to get you moving, inspired and motivated for the month ahead. The first Tuesday of the month is a favorite day of the week. It's Tarot Tuesday, where I do, you can see all the tarot cards up there on the shelf. So I do tarot readings for anyone in the group who would like an individual reading. We've got Wisdom Wednesday, which is normally in kind of an essay, think tank and coaching piece, where we've gone back as far as Aristotle and Socrates, right through to kind of some of what I call the modern day pioneers of personal development. I know it might sound unusual, but people like Abraham Maslow blew my mind when we did it, actually, because if I'd taken away the name Abraham Maslow and said who said these quotes and who came up with these concepts and ideas, you probably would have thought it was somebody like Tony Robbins. So, you know, really fascinating, you know, and all, you know, Catherine Ponder, the Andy Warhol one I really love, David Bowie. You know, we go through the ages, and we've had the Know Thyself and looking at some of the ancient statements. So what I do is I write an essay piece around those, and then I create a series of coaching questions around them. We have Think Tank Thursday, which is what we're doing today, where people can submit a question about a challenge, anything they want to work on. We do it as a Facebook Live, and normally the Facebook Lives, the reason you don't normally see them is that they're in the membership group page. And I believe that I can use this now. What we know, the system we're using now, I think I can do that in the membership group page, but I just, because Think Tank Thursday will be a real nuisance, I have to go and record the whole thing again. But I'm going to try it with a shorter one just to make sure it works in the group. And so I think we'll be able to do that from here on in. We've got Focus Friday, which is about doing a roundup of the month and getting clarity on the month ahead. We've got Sharing Saturday, which is when I come up with, like, when I came across that, you know, the 3-minute, you know, healing wand, the one I shared at the new device that I shared at the membership group a couple of months ago at the free 1-day workshop for members. So anything new that I come across, anything cool, I'll share it for Sharing Saturday. And it's where we also do free teleseminars, webinars for the members, etc. So that one really varies in terms of what we cover. And then we have Soul Food Sunday, which is something to nourish and feed the soul. So there you have it. Just want to say thank you so much for joining me, and wishing you all a fabulous end of month, and gosh, November and beyond. And I'm cooking up a few things for the membership group in terms of how we're going to round off the year. So there are a couple of ideas that I'm mulling over. I will let you know when I've decided what we're going to be doing. But yeah, I think it's going to be the kind of the soul plan core issue therapy thing, which we're going to do as a group to identify any separation patterns. It will be a good idea to let go of as we move into the new year, but I will give you more clarity on that because there's 3 or 4 ideas I've got, so I'm just kind of thinking about what it would be. So thank you for watching. Thank you to everyone who is in the membership group. And if you would like to join the membership group, you've got 3 options. You can join as a monthly member, where you can just come in for a month, so you get to experience all of the 7 themes regardless of when you join. I'll make sure you get to experience all of them regardless of the length of the month, because of course some months are a little bit shorter than others. You can do annual membership, so you can join for the entire year, or there is an option for lifetime memberships. If you want more information about that, you can go to www.marilynsmembershipgroup.eventbrite.com, and Marilyn is MARILYN. So Marilyn's, and that's got an S on the end, Marilyn's membership group.eventbrite.com, and you'll find all the details there. Cool. Thank you for watching. Wishing you wonderful rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are residing in the world. And for those of you who are joining me this evening, UK time, for the photo reading mastermind group, we're looking at direct learning and natural brilliance, and that goes live at 8 p.m. today in the video webinar room. So not this platform, this is more for public broadcasting, but we'll be in the private video webinar room. So I will speak to you later. Thank you all for watching. Catch you soon. Bye-bye.